Tēnā koutou katoa. Nā mihi atu, thank you Te Taka for having us here today. Ko tamahanga te manga, ko maharangi hauraki te moana, ko maharangi te awa, ko Staphen te waka, ko Ngāti, ko taranei Pakiha e te iwi, no Purahura wai ahau, ko Stephen FitzHerbert, te punga here matai mata whenua tangata ahau ki Taihoro Nukarangi. Tēnā koutou, Māori rā koutou katoa. Kia ora, I'm Stephen. Today I'm just going to share a little bit of the story about what we're going through at the moment at NIWA. So we've got the kōrero there, the words Hikina te Arai, so lifting the veil. And this is us at Taihoro Nukarangi sort of trying to share what the challenges that we're facing as a research entity, and then trying to realise those aspirations for our Māori partners, aspirations and also rights. So, before I keep going on further, I'll just give you a little bit of a kōrero about myself, just because you're wondering who is this grand Pakiha in front of you. So I'm a geographer as trained, and so this is a little bit of my hikoi to starting to work for Māori. So it starts up in NIWA, which then led to a bit of an invitation to head up north to Ahipara and find out about what some of the challenges, but some of the sort of the hopes that whānau were trying to realise up there. And it was all around peru-peru. So I'm not technical at all. If you want to talk peru-peru, I'm super keen. Most things are peru-peru for me. And here's just some pictures of the mahi that we've done. The map there, it's just a bit of my hikoi in terms of working directly for Kaumātua and Kūwaha. So it's sharing peru-peru around the motu, sharing stories about what people are doing, and sharing some of the mātauranga. So this was during my Masters and my PhD, and the kōrero that's attached to this never saw day of light in my PhD. This was a kaupapa that was marae to marae, in which those stories were shared in that place, as well as seed. I guess one way to sort of understand where we are at the moment at Taihoro Nukarangi is a little bit of the whakapapa around peru-peru, in terms of it turned up here at some point, not with the waka, and so there was this stage of sort of figuring out what is this new thing, how can it be of a resource to people, what are the opportunities around it. So it's sort of growing this relationship with this new thing, and it's very much how sort of we're trying to consider AI at the moment. What is this? So we can go to our Māori partners and be really clear about some of the opportunities that this technology can bring. Then the last two, peru-peru up there, it's a bit of a, there's whakatauki around the taru parara peru-peru. So this was sort of taught to me by a couple of the kaumātua. It was also a good sort of caution. It was sort of through these eyes that you can see up there on the peru-peru, the tipuna is watching you. And as you look through those eyes, you can also see the next generation. So there's no pressure, but just make sure you do things right. And lastly, this is just a picture of me. So after that sort of journey, I went overseas for a little bit. I was in Switzerland. They're sort of working a little bit around sort of some of the international stuff around Indigenous rights, and I've been a lecturer there. And then it was time to come home, and I joined NIWA about 3 years ago. So for the next few bits, I'm just going to give an overview of NIWA, then an overview of Te Kūwaha, which is where I do most of my mahi, and then Alan's going to come up and talk to you about what are they doing in the Technology and Innovation Group. And then lastly, we'll sort of finish with a little bit of a kōrero around just sort of the points that we're sort of challenged by and the things that we're trying to work through at the moment. So, kia ora. So, this is my technical skills. Getting confused that I've got two going. So NIWA, what are we? So we're one of the Crown Research Institutes, and our mandate is sort of to do the mahi around freshwater, climate, and oceans in New Zealand. So here's some of the current sort of big organisational directions that we're going in, particularly around improving our waterways and oceans, thinking through what a productive, sustainable economy looks like, biodiversity matters, transitioning to this thing called a low carbon economy, and then adapting to climate change. If you've got any more questions about this, please reach out, but I'll move into the more interesting things. Next, I'd like to just introduce Te Kūwaha. So this is our Māori Research Centre. They've been around for about 20 years. You can see at the top, we've got some of our seniors. Then in the middle, our sort of permanent scientists, and then our rangatahi Māori researchers that are coming through or currently with us on internships. So they do all sorts of mahi that involves working directly with whānau and marae and iwi. Likewise, sort of working across some of the wholesale NIWA research programs when you've got all different scientists all coming together. And this is the absolute centre of what drives NIWA and which shapes the Māori strategy for how NIWA can work responsibly and in the right ways with Māori communities. So just a little bit of show you a little bit of what's going on in-house. So Te Kūwaha sort of going through a stage of sort of strategic recruitment all the time. There's a big sort of drive to grow more Māori research capacity, and this is particularly for us at the moment in terms of data science. When we came to Te Taka last year, we wanted to kōrero around some of the AI things that we thought would see fit, but we're still very much in the stage that we don't have a Māori data scientist at this space. So this is something we really need to sort of like work towards and figure out how we encourage Māori data scientists to think of us as a good whare to do their mahi. Te Pua Waitanga, so this is a wholesale sort of building cultural competency within NIWA. We've got some ways to go, but we are making progress. And then likewise some of the work around the vision mātauranga reset. And that's again a sort of an entire sort of lift in behaviour change across NIWA. So that's very much about increasing the capacity and the capabilities that really make sure that we deliver Māori-driven research outcomes. Another part of that is strengthening NIWA's understanding of Te Tiriti, and so this has been including new policies and new protocols, particularly around Māori data sovereignty, mātauranga Māori, and IP protection for Māori data. So just on reflection, it's sort of the bigger scheme of taking the organisation on a journey towards giving the full expression of Te Tiriti. We've found the kaupapa around Māori data sovereignty as a really good place to start that conversation in which some of our seniors and our exec and our board say, okay, here's something here we can concentrate on. So it's sort of like a nice introduction to them saying, oh, cool, maybe you're starting to understand this thing around Māori data sovereignty. Let's go to the next step and think about Te Tiriti and all its fullness. And lastly, so Te Kūwaha, they deliver the Te Kūwaha science strategy for NIWA. So some of the key focus areas that Te Kūwaha is working on at the moment is all the things around our tonga species, working around degraded ecosystems, working on sort of economic prosperity for Māori, looking at hazards and climate adaptation and how that relates to our Māori communities, and then water resources. Then we've also got quite a large part around aquaculture and fisheries as well. So as part of NIWA, one of the things is, so with Te Kūwaha, the work that happens with Māori and with our Māori partners, all the mātauranga, all the information always stays with the partner. And the bigger picture for NIWA is like we hold all these national data sets about our oceans, about our climate and our water. And this is where we're really trying to figure out, okay, how do we realise the potential of this and stretch it out to make sure that Māori have access to be able to do what they need to do with that sort of information. So one of our current things, so we've been, for the last 2 years, we've been running a couple of internal projects around Māori data sovereignty, and then also working through Y262, and then how we're able to give those effect. So in terms of the AI space, it's very much about developing new relationships within the organisation as well. So we're trying to bring Te Kūwaha and NIWA's Technology and Innovation Group together to be able to sort of work through what is possible. A lot of it is sort of actually just getting familiar with each other, making sure everyone's, I guess, politics and drive is situated for delivering to Māori. Just sort of involves exploring some AI opportunities and applications that can be of benefit, so stuff around education, stuff around governance, science opportunities, and also decision support. Just sort of scoping the development of platforms and protocols that give effect to Māori data sovereignty, so especially that environmental data and tonga species data that NIWA holds. And likewise the development of IP and data protocols for tonga data. And likewise, a big thing for us is sort of recognising we really need to identify opportunities for enhancing our data science capability through recruitment, but likewise, whilst we currently don't have Māori data scientists, we really want to explore opportunities for collaboration and partnerships. So I'm going to have to pass it over to Alan now, who's going to talk about some of the AI examples that we're doing at NIWA. So a bit of context, so T&I was started 2 years ago in NIWA, and it was sort of a recognition that this sort of space is blowing up. We need to sort of be able to play a part in there. So it's still a relatively new team, and they're sort of all sort of working on very different sort of projects at the moment. And I've put the pictures here of Alan, who you've all met yesterday, and this is Cameron Christopher, our chief scientist. So he comes from South LA, and he's been living in Aotearoa maybe sort of the last 6 or 7 years. So kia ora, I'll pass it over to Alan.
Morena, ko Alan Tan toku inua. That's currently my limits for my material. Hopefully next time I see you guys, you'll be better. Thank you. Thank you, Stephen, for introducing. So I'm from the data science team with NIWA, and we sit under the technological and innovation group. As Stephen mentioned just now, the team is led by Cameron Christopher. Unfortunately, he cannot be here today because he's in Australia for another conference. So he sends his apologies. So we are sort of a young team, about 2 years plus, and we are currently at around 7-man strength, multinational data scientists and engineers. Myself, I'm from Singapore, so that sort of speaks to that a little bit. The aim for the group is, the aim for the team is actually to look at across NIWA's research areas and identify whether opportunities to look at applying data science to sort of maximize the potential that NIWA's research is capable of. We sort of operate in a across NIWA space where we work with the different research group, and then on the other hand, we also have interface directly with NIWA's HPC systems. That's where we do a lot of our data processing and computation, like building the models and everything. So that's sort of like the rough relationship between the group, NIWA, and our IT infrastructure. Right, so in the team we have quite a diverse skill set. This is just a small little subset of the skill sets that the whole team collectively have. I won't go too deep into that, but I thought what would be good is to actually just to go through briefly a few example projects of what we are doing currently across the team and across with the rest of NIWA. So primarily, I think the prime target here is that one of the areas is looking at how we can use data science in correlation with like remote sensing technologies to actually understand the environment, the habitat, and then so things like, for example, whether using aerial imagery to sort of link how land use changes impact on water quality in the nearby streams and water bodies. We also look at using remote sensing to sort of like capture images of underwater seabeds and try to use build 3D models from them to and then analyze to see, okay, what's the habitat made of, why is it suitable for different ecospecies. We also look at using deep reinforcement learning technologies to actually look at how we can optimize the use of our HPC systems, so reducing the energy consumption so that it's more environmental friendly, reducing our carbon emission. We also try to apply reinforcement learning to the other primary sectors like fisheries to look at devising new rules to inform the government and our stakeholders in the commercial fishery around like how, okay, this is actually, we recommend that this is how you should harvest, but then that's sort of more on the guideline space, more on the consultation space rather than saying, no, this, you should do this, no, we don't do that. And finally, looking at also the hazard space, how we can use AI, and in this case, my colleagues works on like a physics-based hybrid model, so bringing domain knowledge together with AI, and look at how we can better predict floods, and not only that, to actually bring that to real time, so that we can respond more quickly to what's happening on the ground, and so on. Yeah. So I'll pass it back to Stephen. Thank you.
Yeah, so just got a couple more slides left. So this is sort of where we're currently at in Te Kūwaha, and then our sort of work within NIWA as a whole to help them along their journey, and particularly sort of identify to them the resource that's within the whare, and then our responsibilities to making sure that this resource is appropriately connected and accessible by Māori. So NIWA primarily, so in terms of that box, yeah, thanks, I borrowed this off one of the Te Wānanga publications, which we sort of tribute just a massive mihi to their mahi and those that have come before them. Those high-level protocols have been a fantastic way to communicate to a multicultural organisation the way about going forward with this. So it's been really helpful for us in terms of navigating that space and bringing some of our, they're not opposed, but people who are very early on in their journey with Te Tiriti and all things Māori. So this circle here, this is one of the big spaces in NIWA. So data about Māori resources and environments. So there is large data sets around the climate, there's large information around hazards, there's information about why, there's information about our moana as well. So there's a lot of recorded information that has sort of come from both the legacy of when there weren't Crown Research Institutes, and it was a department of, science, industry and research, so it was sort of the big sort of government thing, to the CRI models today, when each CRI is sort of given their own sort of mandate about what they look at in terms. Likewise, we still collect a lot of information on behalf of some of the ministries, so particularly Ministry of Primary Industries and Ministry for the Environment. Likewise, there's also commercial clients that will ask for information around their particular sort of infrastructure assets, and we're sort of in the early days of trying to figure out how we all come to the party so that the information derived from those projects, that Māori have access to that and can make their decisions over how that data is used. So here's just some examples. This is sort of what we played with a little bit last year. It was to try and just sort of give some of our colleagues a picture in their head about what this looks like at NIWA. So very much sort of like to try and socialise these protocols within the house. And there's a couple of examples that some of our rangatahi researchers looked at to just sort of scope out, sketch out ideas that could be done around AI applications, about being a kai tiaki and sort of understanding the relations with tuna, to purako, and then also applications that support taiao. So I guess, yeah, so the key messages for us, the first thing is to try and just sort of give some of our colleagues a picture in their head about what this looks like at NIWA. So very much sort of like to try and socialise these protocols within the house. And there's a couple of examples that some of our rangatahi researchers looked at to just sort of scope out, sketch out ideas that could be done around AI applications to purako, and then also applications that support taiao. NIWA is super fortunate to have Te Kūwaha. They've been around for early 2000s, and they have a really strong track record in working collaboratively with Māori communities, and always sort of taking the lead by who they partner with and making sure that any information that's collected through any mahi research note stays primarily with those Māori communities, and that they have the ultimate say about how that mātauranga or how that information is used. Over the last couple of years, we've been trying to sort of build up our capability and capacity in data science, and we're sort of seeing that as a bigger picture towards better integrating te ao Māori, data science and social science and economics together to sort of, I guess, bring some vitality to some of maybe the more traditional ways that science has been done. And we see that sort of bringing these three together is very much impact and outcome driven, as we want to work with and commit to in terms of working with Māori to realise benefit. We're very much at the beginning of our journey, navigating this Māori data sovereignty space, and also the Y262. In early days of trying to build that capability in the Māori AI space. We've been investing for the last few years, like quite a lot of time and pūtea, in terms of sort of figuring this stuff out. And just as a little bit of insight there, so our rōpū that is working on this, we're sort of quite a mix. We've got Marino Tahi, our GM of Māori and Pacific Partnerships, we've got our Chief Scientist, Erika Williams, myself, we've got some of our rangatahi Māori in there as well, and then also we've got our legal team and then some of the managers of our national collection. So trying to just bring some sort of diversity of thought to that, to be able to sort of work through that. And we've got some live case studies with some of our key Māori partners in terms of how we work this out in first context in terms of just getting the access to these bigger national data sets, and then likewise working through what does repatriation look like in this space. So we're working with partners on that as well. So to that end, we're sort of delivering sort of these sort of, or working through sort of live case studies that sometimes they move quick, sometimes they move slow, and there's always a bit of debate, which is really good. And I think for personal reflection, the challenges that we're facing, and especially the direct challenges that are coming from our Māori partners, it's a fantastic time because those challenges are going straight to our board and they're going straight to our executive. So for many of these people, they haven't had that much connection with the space, and now they're like, oh, can you please help us understand this a bit? We need to do something here. So for me personally, that's a positive in terms of that move. So we're trying to, make sure we sort of keep that that journey alive, and sort of having to sort of navigate them and support them to make sure we realise that benefit. The priorities here for Te Kūwaha is always sort of driven by our Māori area hapuru needs. So that's delivering research that's of benefit to them, products that's of benefit to Māori, and ongoing support. So just because there's a research project for 6 months, it's like that doesn't really mean anything in the grander scheme of the relationship. There's always a sort of pick up the phone and we'll sort of figure out what we can do. And we're taking a learn as we sort of do approach, first and foremost shaped by our Māori partners, and it's been really helpful to have those Te Manaranga protocols also on the side, that we can start thinking of, okay, what are some of the bigger picture protocols that we can take an organisation on a new journey with. So